Hello, everyone, and Happy New Year. Welcome you to the Mastermind Your Parenting Journey. My name is Hang. I'm a founder of Connectoyou. And today with me is Lyle from Australia. Hello, thank you so much for having time with me today. Would you like to introduce a little bit about you with our audience?
Sure. Thank you, Hang. Thank you for having me. So my name is Lael Stone. I am a parenting educator. I do many things. I've worked with families for nearly 20 years, all the way from birth up into the teenage years. So I taught for a very long time childbirth education, and then I began to work postnatally with women, particularly who'd had trauma. I worked for many years in secondary schools teaching sex ed and relationship education to teenagers, which was an incredibly fun job and very enlightening. I work with parents a lot on all sorts of different aspects of parenting. So I work with a framework called Aware Parenting. I am also a mum to three beautiful big children, and they're 21, 18 and 13. And I'm also the co-creator of Woodline Primary School, which is a new school that we opened here in Australia, which is all based around emotional awareness, connection, non-punitive discipline. It's a beautiful farm school where the children get to be outside all the time. And our whole focus is really on making sure children emotionally feel safe so that they're able to learn. So I'm also an author. My book is coming out in about a month or two, which is really exciting. And I have a podcast and lots of other bits and pieces that I do. But really my main work is working with families. It's really to support children to be the best version of themselves that they can be.
Yeah, wow. Thank you so much. Your experience was very, for me, like very impressed. And, I'm look up to become somebody like you in the future. Yeah, and because of your experience with emotional and parent and children, that's why I really want to talk to you, because that I want to help parents and educators out there to have experience from an expert like you, so they can raise their children, happily and confidently. That's the goal of this summit.
Yes, I like that. Perfect. Yeah, it's easier for everybody if we can do that.
Yeah, thank you so much. And so, because you mentioned about your school is main focus on children emotion, and then they are out there all the time. So I know that some parents, they might think like, they have to learn math and English and other subject, but not emotion. So can you explain a little bit like how important of emotions is in a child life?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, our philosophy, particularly our school, is that it's very hard for children to learn when they're feeling dysregulated. So whether they're worried about something at home, whether they find it very hard to sit still, whether their body needs to move, whether, their friend at playtime or lunchtime was really mean to them and they're worried about it. Our philosophy is that when children feel balanced or when they feel centered, they're more open to learning. We also know that children learn best when there's choice and autonomy and when they feel excited and inspired about learning. So what we do is, our schooling system here in Australia is probably like many all around the world. It's like children should learn this, this, and this. But our system that was set up many, many years ago was set up for the industrial age. It was set up to kind of just have people who aren't creative thinkers, who aren't so much about thinking critically. It's really just about, we all want you to fit into this box and you must regurgitate the information back that we teach you. But we live in a completely different world these days. We have computers to give us information at the drop of a hat. We have access to information and technology that we never had, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 50 years ago. And so what we see now more than ever is that we have to value what we call EQ, which is emotional awareness, just as highly as IQ. And emotional awareness and EQ is really about our ability to interact with other humans. It's about our ability to connect to our feelings and emotions, to know what we're feeling, to then be able to speak what we need, to have strong yeses, to have strong nos, to know what feels good for us, for what doesn't, to be able to process our feelings and emotions in a healthy way so that we don't suppress them, so that it turns into anxiety or depression. I think through the research over the last really 10, 20 years, we've begun to understand things like anxiety and depression and panic attacks and PTSD, all these kind of things that a lot of adults are living with. And, what we can tell is, as we stem back to so many of the imprints that we had when we were children around how we respond with feelings and emotions, sets up our emotional story that often plays out as an adult. So our philosophy at our school is very much like, we want kids to learn and understand, how to write and read and numeracy and literacy and all the amazing things that we need to be in the world. But we also want to educate them and teach them about themselves and about how to have empowering relationships, how to be able to focus on what it is that they want, how to speak their truth if they need to. We want children to know that when they are upset, it doesn't mean that they're bad or there's something wrong. It's just, there's something here for me that I need to work with. And we know that, and the research all says this, when we have or develop a greater understanding about our emotional well-being, then we actually are going to be more successful in life. We can get the best grades at school, we can study hard and get the best marks, but we may have really failed relationships. We may feel completely alone and isolated, in the job we do or with our family. So it really is a whole big picture of how do we create healthy humans, which has to involve the emotional being of who they are.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with you. It's just now today EQ is very, very important, and it's like the skill everybody should have, not only adult but also children. And so you mentioned about like the feeling children have, and it's also about the family as well. So I have an idea, like I think, okay, so that might be the key for parents to connect with your children. Is not only through math, science, or physics, it have through emotions. And so how important that a parent could really connect with your child on the emotional level, and how could they do that?
So I think for me, I have a bit of a saying, which is connection is always the answer, which means that when kids are scared about something, when they're having a hard time, when they don't want to do something, when they won't cooperate, then usually what's needed is connection. So we have to remember that children, they're born and they're kind of helpless little beings. Their foundation of them surviving is based on attachment. And really, right from the very beginning, a child learns, in order for me to survive, I need food and I need shelter, but I also need an attachment figure. So they learn pretty quickly, what do I need to do to be attached to this figure? Now, if we have adults in our life who are very authoritarian, which means they, you must do this and that's not acceptable, or, they're very overpowering in their energy, then what often happens is a child learns to be a good boy or a good girl because it's based on survival. I need your approval in order to basically live. But what happens is that can often then suppress a lot of the big feelings and emotions that we all have as humans. Like I say to everybody, we are all angry and frustrated and sad, as well as happy and joyous and passionate. We have all these feelings and emotions, and one is not better than the other. They're just feelings. And our job is to learn how to feel them, express them in a healthy way, and then be able to let them go so we can move on. But our culture for many, many years has said, these feelings over here, they're not okay. So we need to shut them down, or we need to ignore them, or we need to somehow, numb them out so we don't feel them. But they have to go somewhere. They stay within us. They stay in our bodies. So when we come back to connection, one of the most important things I think as a parent is, how do we stay connected to our kids when they're angry and upset, when they're scared, also when they're happy, when they're passionate, all those kind of things. And really, for me, one of the big things when parents come to me saying, I've got an issue with my child because they won't get dressed in the morning, or they refuse to do this or refuse to do that, my response is, where is your connection? Because we're hardwired to want to connect with other humans, and we're definitely hardwired to want to connect to our, parental figures. And really, we have this inbuilt mechanism that says, I actually want to please you. I want to feel loved by you. I want to do the right thing. But if there's disconnection, right? So if there's a lot of authoritarian parenting, if there's a lot of yelling, or there's, harsh discipline, a child isn't going to feel connected to them. They might behave or they might respond in a way that the parent wants, but it's usually out of fear. It's not coming from a place of, I authentically want to make you happy and feel good with you. So when it comes to things like cooperation, connection is always the answer. If we want our kids to cooperate, we want our children to set the table for dinner or to go jump in the car to go to school, if our child's feeling disconnected, they're often not going to want to do it. And then we get frustrated as parents and we might yell and we ask them 5 times. And then we say, if you don't do it, I'm going to take something away from you. And really what children often need is some connection. And that can be as simple as, if your child's on the floor building something and they're really engrossed and you're like, hey, honey, we have to go to school. And they're just like, they don't even hear that because they're just focused on building this thing. What connection would look like is going over and putting your hand on their shoulder and getting down low and going, hey, what are you building? And they might be like, I'm building this tower. And you're like, that's amazing. I'm just letting you know in 2 minutes we have to go to school. Do you want to finish one piece or should we go and put it up there so you can come back and do it when we get home from school? What would you like to do to complete it so we can go? Now that is a sign of connection. We are getting down low. We're meeting them where they're at. We're not making them wrong for not listening. We're just entering into their world to say, hey, let me offer you a bit of connection so that we then can move on to the next thing. So it's the same when we might ask our children to do chores or jobs or those kind of things. If a child is having a hard time, if they've had a really hard day at school or their brother's being mean to them, they're going to feel pent up feelings in their bodies and they're going to be less resistant to want to do the things that we want them to do. So again, connection is the answer. Connection might be going over saying, hey, I've asked you to, get ready for dinner and you're not doing that. And, what's going on? It might be just, some conversation to say, hey, did you have a hard day? Do you want to tell me about it? It might be being playful. It might be like, hey, let's see if we can set the dinner at the table in, under a minute. Should we time ourselves? Let's go. All of a sudden, children love play, right? It's, that's their main connection point. Or it could be helping to listen to some of their feelings so they can offload how they're feeling so that they then are willing to cooperate. So for me, no matter what, whether it's a little one, whether it's a teenager, connection is so vital because we as parents, we often just tell our kids to do things and expect them to do it. And then we get frustrated when they don't. And then we think they're disobedient or they're not okay, but actually they're humans, right? And like us, if we had a boss who just walked in and said, do this now, we'd be like, why don't I just do that now? Whereas if your boss came in and said, I really appreciate what you're doing. Hey, I know this job might not be fun, but, would you be willing to do that? And then we can do something else, or I've got something else exciting for you, and because it's respectful, because there's connection there, we're more willing to want to do it. Whereas when we're just told we have to do something or when we're barked orders at, we often, sometimes children will do it because again, there's that need for attachment for survival, but often there's a part of them that's just like, this doesn't feel good. I don't like it. So for me, connection is vital, and that can come through just, little things like listening to your kids, at the end of the school day, can come through play, which is just one of the best ways to create connection depending on the age of your child. There's many, many ways we can connect, but whenever, I work with parents and there's a disagreement going on or there's an issue going on with the child, my first question is always, where's your connection, right? Are you getting on their level? Do you know what's going on for them? Are you even present with them? Are you got 5 things going on, that you're not actually even really present with them? Where is the connection? And it's our job as a parent to always bring the connection. It's not the child's job. It's our job to bring the connection.
Yeah. So for me, it's very interesting of what you just shared. On one hand, it's very obvious, like when the connection comes from through communications. But also that when you talk like, okay, a child is play and then we touch them, for me, that's for like physical connections. And then you're going to open the space for them to really feel that we are there for them. Like we respect their opinion. It's not like, you have to do that. You have to go to school now. We are late and so on.
Yes.
But I guess it's just a few seconds that to kind of transition the emotion and the activity that the child is doing.
Yeah. It's I say to parents quite often, it may feel like, oh God, there's another thing I have to do, but 2 or 3 minutes of connection can make a massive difference. You could go up to your child and say, hey, we've got to put our shoes on because we've got to get to school. Do you want to have a thumb wrestle first? And you could do like a thumb wrestle with them for like 1 minute, and there's giggling and they're like, no, you beat me again. And, all of a sudden there's connection there. And then you're like, let's go find your shoes. Right. And so they're more willing to go and find their shoes and do it because that connection is holding them there. Whereas if we just walk in the room and we're, put your shoes on now, got to get in the car, like, because, we're busy and we have a lot of things that we're going on as parents. And if we do that, though, the child often is less willing. And then, then there's a rupture there, and then we feel like there's no connection. So little bits of micro connections can make a massive difference in creating cooperation with our kids.
Yeah. So in my mind, okay, it's very good when you have, so at which age should we start practicing like connection with our children?
Yeah. Well, connection starts from when they're little babies, right? And connection, it starts with looking in their eyes. It's talking to them. It's singing to them. It's touching them. It's playing peekaboo with them. It's about that, contact and, physical closeness and facial stuff, like all of that right from the very beginning. And then perhaps when they become crawling little bubbers or toddlers, it's still playing on the floor with them, it's laughing, it's making silly noises, it's being present when they've hurt themselves, like it's listening to their feelings. It's right from the very, very beginning. We want to facilitate connection. We're human beings and we need to feel each other. And when we feel each other and we feel that there's someone there who deeply loves and accepts us just the way we are, then we get an internal sense that who I am is enough. And therefore what happens as we grow up, we develop an inner barometer that says, I am, I'm an okay human, or I'm a fabulous human, or I'm a great human, which then gives us more motivation to take risks, to speak up, to be creative, to try hard things. All of that comes from an internal sense of confidence and resilience that really stems back to the connection pieces from when we're little.
Yeah. So what if we already like disconnect with our child? Like where should we start over?
Yeah, that's a good question. So it's never too late to start. Doesn't matter if your kids are teenagers or they're adults, right? It's never too late to start. And part of the connection starts by just listening. And that can be as simple as, how was your day? Now, your child might go into, oh, God, this person did this and this person did that. And one of the biggest things, I think that we make a mistake as parents is we don't listen well. So when I worked with teenagers and I worked with them for quite a few years, and I used to ask the teenagers all the same question, which was this: if you could change one thing about your parent, what do you wish looked different? And I think probably 85% would say, I just wish they would listen. And what they meant by listening, there were three things they wanted when they were listening. The first one was, I want them to listen without judging me. So I don't want them to then go, oh, well, you shouldn't have done that. And, if only you did this, that wouldn't have looked that way. So the first thing is they didn't want to be judged. The second thing was they wanted their parents to listen without jumping into the drama with them. So if a child's saying, oh God, this happened, and the parent's like, oh my God, and gets really, all of a sudden the child's like, oh God, now this is a big drama and it's a big problem, right? And the third thing they wanted to be listened to without fixing. And this is the number one thing that I see as an issue with us as humans. We always have got to fix for someone. And that comes from a really well-meaning place, because as parents particularly, we love our children and we want them to be okay, and we don't want to see them hurt and we don't want to see them suffering. And it's often because of our own pain that we want to jump in and fix it and make it okay. But we actually deprive our children from learning how to navigate hard things if we jump in and fix. And so, when we come back to how do we do this, even if we haven't done it? Well, we start by just listening, no matter what age it is. So when someone's opening up to you and saying, hey, this is what's happened today, instead of going, oh, well, maybe you could just do this, this, and this, you nod and you go, gosh, that sounds hard. Tell me more. And you listen. And it's the hardest thing to do as a human. And I love to reflect to parents this. Let's just imagine you've had a really hard day at work, right? And your boss was mean to you and somebody said something and you got a nasty email, and you came home and you said to your partner, God, I've had a really hard day. And they go, oh, what happened? And you start talking about it. And as soon as you start talking about how, your boss wasn't very kind to you, and they jump in with, well, what you need to do tomorrow is you need to go in there and you need to say to your boss, don't you dare talk to me this way. And they come in with all these fixes. Like, how's it going to feel? And I know how it feels, because we just kind of then shut down. We just go, you're not listening to me. or you're just trying to fix my problem. And actually I don't need that. What I need is for you to be empathetic, and I need for you to listen and say to me, that sounds hard. What can I do for you? How can I support you? That's what we deeply desire and crave as humans. And we often get that really wrong, right? We don't listen with the quality of listening, which is really about, wow, I'm hearing that sounds really hard. And, you know, the energy we want to come back, particularly to kids, is I really trust you'll find your way through that. And if you need help, I'm here. You know, so, you know, I have a bit of a rule of thumb as a parent that I will never offer my kids advice unless they ask. And so often what I used to say is when they tell me something really big, I would often then say, would you like me to just listen, or do you want some suggestions on what to do? And sometimes they'll just say, I just want you to listen. Now, even if I have the best suggestion on earth, and even if I know the thing that could fix their problem, don't offer it. Like, you got to be quiet, right? Because again, if they want help, they'll come and ask. So when we come back to what can we do if we haven't had that connection, well, it's never too late to start listening. It's never too late to meet our kids where they're at. So if your child loves playing computer games, right, and you feel like you're disconnected from them, go over and say, can you teach me how to play that game? And they'll probably look at you like, are you crazy, right? But enter into their world. What is it they're into? You know, if your 4-year-old loves playing with blocks and building towers, get on the floor and go, let's build one together, right? And just let them show you how to do it. Or if you know, you have a 12-year-old daughter and they're really into watching some tragic thing on YouTube, right, that you think is like, oh God, but go down and sit and go, tell me what you're watching and what is that like and what music you're into. Like, meet them where they're at, because that starts to build connection. And it's, again, it's our job to bring the connection. So we can start by listening and not fixing. And we can start by meeting them where they're at through play, or just, you know, being interested in their world. And the third thing we can do to start building connection is by not using punishments and rewards, but by being a safe place for them to come with their big feelings.
Yeah, so I think it's very, very good start. For example, when the connection is no longer there, like, we can start over by really go to like what, because I believe that every single child, they have their own interest, but they just don't want to share with the parent. And it seems like the parent have to do like one step extra to really get into what the children like. And by listening to you, I have the feeling that, okay, the question is like, how can I support? Basically, it's give the power to the child. Like, really, like, we want them to make their own opinion and make their own decision. It's not like you have to do what I say.
That's huge, because your child is they are an autonomous being. They are their own unique being. And I think that's another big thing that parents can, you know, and it comes from a place of love. I want my child to be successful, but often that's connected to, if you're a successful human, then that means I've done a good job, right? Which is actually not what it's about at all. We want our children to be the best version of themselves, and in order to do that, they have to be authentic to themselves. Now, if we have all these conditions on what they should do and be, then often we're squishing that authenticity. We're saying, I want you to fit into this box because that's what's going to make me happy. And for a lot of children, they'll try and do it because they want their parents' approval and their love, but actually what it does is they often deny, you know, their true spirit or their sense of self or their passions or all those kind of things to make them happy. And it's a really big shift, you know, because we, you know, for many years we've been conditioned with this parenting, behaviorism parenting, which is you must be good all the time, and if you're good, I will reward you, and if you're bad, I'll take something away. So often, you know, when you're bad and you take something away, what that often is I'm going to withdraw my love from you. And so it then becomes very conditional. Children really learn, I'm only lovable when I'm good. And so then what happens is they go out into the world and then they're like, oh, do people approve of me? Like, am I good enough? Am I okay? Instead of having an innate knowing that says, actually, I'm an amazing human just purely because I'm born, because that's the truth. We're all amazing. You know, we've all got a right to be here on this planet, and we're all incredible just the way we are. But we often have been conditioned through most of our lives to go, you're only acceptable if you look like this, or you earn this much money, or you get this many grades, or you're a good boy or a good girl. right? And then that it sets up a whole lot of often angst and pressure and an imprint as adults that, we're only lovable if we fit into a certain box.
Wow, yeah. So, I mean, listen to you talk about like conditions of love, and like you have to be in this way in order to make the parent happy. So I just remember like when I was teaching like 5 years old class to play with children, and then I asked them, how do you know if you are a good child? And all of them have the same answers. Number one is well behaved. Number two, listen to their parent. I said, wow, okay, it sounds to be like very common for parents to think that way.
Yeah, it is, because I think for a very long time, our culture, our world has just said, you're either good or bad. And, a good child is one that does what they're told. But again, what we have to look at is when we do that, we are then raising children who don't actually become critical thinkers. They don't actually speak the truth. They don't stand up for things that aren't okay in the world. They are like, I must be good in order to be okay. And so, it's what we've been conditioned to believe for a very, very long time. And I think what's exciting now is the research and the literature and the data all really speaks to the fact actually that behaviorism parenting, which is really about good and bad, it actually can set up a lot of self-esteem issues. It can set up, anxiety, depression, mental health issues later in life, because we all have natural feelings where we're like, I don't like that, or that doesn't feel good, or I felt scared, or I don't like that you give my brother more attention, and when we're taught as children to suppress those feelings, because that's what most of us are taught, they don't just disappear, they stay within us. And then we have to find ways to kind of keep those feelings down. We have to keep working hard to numb them, because when they come out, and as little children, they come out naturally in maybe tantrums or getting upset, they're labeled as bad and wrong, whereas really they're just an expression of the frustration that children are feeling.
Yeah, and I mean, this frustration might not come from the parents as well. For example, I think nowadays it's very common that teens or children in general, they really like devices, like they on their devices all the time. And when parents feel like powerless, they just very usual, they take the device and throw it on the floor, and children like freezing, what the hell is going on here, and then what did I do, and how and why did you do that?
Yes. Technology is the biggest repression mechanism that we have, right? So on one level, when parents are feeling stressed or they're having a hard day, which is very normal because parenting's hard and we're working and we're all juggling and we're all doing the best we can. But you're having a hard day and your child's kind of nagging at you, like to give them the iPad so they're quiet for an hour is great, right? Because you're like, oh, good, I can be quiet, or I can make dinner, and it can become a great babysitter. And then when we tell the child to get off it and the child doesn't want to, then we get angry and we do something with it. And then the child gets upset, and then we go, it's technology's fault, because look, it's, it's the problem with technology. Whereas really what it is it's, just numbing their feelings and emotions. And when we take away the thing that we're numbing, the feelings come out. It's we learn as children to do kind of three things with feelings and emotions. We learn to repress them, which means when we get upset, if it's not okay to express that upset, we have to kind of shut it down. And so we learn ways to not feel. And that might be sucking your thumb as a little child. It might be needing something to hang on to. It can be wanting technology when they're a toddler. It can be food, wanting to eat all the time when you're upset. And then older kids, it turns into things like, particularly in the teen years, it can turn into more technology, it can turn into drinking, it can turn into drugs, alcohol, food, and we as adults, we have repression mechanisms as well. It can be drinking wine at night. It can be sitting on our phones mindlessly for 3 hours. We do stuff to numb ourselves out because we're not taught how to express our feelings in healthy ways. So, one of the first things we learn as often kids is to repress our feelings. Now, if we don't repress them, the second thing that our feelings can turn into is aggression, which means we see this in little kids when they get so angry and they hit and they kick or they bite, or you might even see it in school kids when they're so frustrated because they've got a build-up of feelings inside, they throw things. And then we see it, as violence in adults, right? We see it particularly with men. We see it as violence in men, when it really is a buildup of feelings and emotions that haven't been able to be expressed. So we can either repress them, or we can turn it into aggression, or the third thing that we do is we learn how to express it in a healthy way. And expressing our feelings is crying, it's getting angry but channeling it in a healthy way, it's going for a run, it's calling a friend and having a chat, it's doing yoga, it's moving our body or expressing the hurts and the frustrations in a healthy way, not numbing them down. And so we have to look at, what do we actually even teach our children? And most adults, what we do is we either teach our kids to repress our feelings, or if we get angry at them, we show them this is what you do when you're upset, you explode and you project it onto someone else. So I often say to parents all the time, what are you modeling to your children about healthy expression of feelings? Do you actually say to your child, I feel so angry at the moment, I'm going to go outside and I'm going to stamp my feet and yell at the trees, or do you say, I'm feeling really sad, I'm actually going to go and ring a friend because it feels better when I can chat to a friend, or I just feel, really worried today. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and do this because it helps me when I feel worried. We don't often model to our children what we do with our big feelings and emotions. And so our kids learn by watching constantly watching. Right now, if we are not modeling what to do with our feelings and emotions, if we're not showing them that we have big feelings and emotions as well, then we're doing them a massive disservice, because really what they are then watching is you either repress it or, it turns into anger.
Yeah, wow, definitely. So I think it's kind of lead to misbehave.
Yeah,
Apologize
totally.
a lot. Yeah.
And that's where we see, look, I have absolutely 100% believe this. I do not believe there's a thing such as a bad child. I don't. I think, and I explain it this way, I explain it, the kids are either what I call in balance or out of balance. And when a child is in balance, it's when you can hear them in their room singing, and they're playing really beautifully with their sibling. And then you say to them, can you please pick up your shoes? And they go, sure. And then they do it, right? So when kids are in balance, they'll usually be, happy, they'll be kind, they'll be doing stuff, to cooperate. When children are out of balance, it's when, they're picking a fight with their sibling, or it's when they're, they're saying, you always ask me to do everything, or, they're wanting to hurt the dog, or they're doing something that is, is not kind on some level. And that is a sign a child's out of balance. And I like to explain it to parents like this. You have to imagine that when you are seeing a behavior like that, what they're doing is they're waving a red flag that says, I'm having a hard time. Okay, I've got some feelings going on here. There's something going on inside me, and I don't know how to process it. I don't know how to get that out. And so then what I like to explain to parents is, well, why would kids have feelings going on? And I'm going to use my little kind of wind up little toy here to give you an example as to why kids might have feelings going on. So let me talk about, say, a 6-year-old, okay? And let's just imagine this is my little 6-year-old here. And let's just imagine it's a day that he has to go to school, right? So this little 6-year-old's fast asleep in bed, all cozy in bed. And then what happens is, mum has woken up and realized, oh my God, we've slept in, we're going to be late. So all of a sudden she's like, oh God, we have to hurry. So he gets woken up out of bed, and straight away he's into this whole hustle and hurry, and we have to get ready. So he starts the day with a bit of tension. So I'm just going to wind him up a little bit of tension. So mum is into, come on, we've got to put our clothes on and get dressed. And, she's hurrying him along. And then, he comes down for breakfast and she's like, what do you want to eat? Do you want toast or do you want cereal? And what do you want in your lunchbox? And, there's all these questions, firing at him. And he sees his trains on the floor and he's just like, oh, there's my trains. And he wants to go play with his trains, but he's copying all these questions, right? And his natural instinct is, oh, I just want to do what I want to do. So a little bit more tension goes on. And then we have to get in the car and get to school. And so that becomes a bit of a hustle again too, because there's an energy of like, come on, hurry. So a bit more tension. And then he gets to school. And even though he quite likes being at school, he has to say goodbye to his parent. And even as little kids, that's a separation and that can feel hard. So even saying goodbye to mum feels tricky. So there's a little bit more tension that goes on in his body. And then he's in his classroom and he looks around and his normal teacher's not there. And he loves his normal teacher because he feels connected to them. But there's somebody else there and he's like, I don't know who this person is and they don't know me. So again, there's some other feelings of unsafety that goes on in there, right? And then they do some schoolwork and this little guy, he struggles a little bit with numbers, you know, and he's being asked a question about numbers and he doesn't know. And in that moment, he kind of freezes and everyone's looking at him and he's starting to feel, oh my God, I don't know what to do. And he's got a little bit of shame going on, more tension happening in his body. And then they go out to play and he goes out to the playground, but he can't find his friends. And he's walking around the school and he's looking for his friends because he doesn't know where they're playing. And, you know, he sees someone, he says, do you know where my friends are? And this little person who's having a hard day says, they don't want to play with you, you know, they don't like you anymore. And all of a sudden again, more tension, right? So this happens throughout the day, a whole lot of things. You know, there might be another time where he really needs to go to the toilet, but, you know, he feels embarrassed to ask if he can go to the toilet. There might be more tension there. So a whole lot of things can happen throughout the day. And then his mum picks him up from school and, you know, they get home and she starts doing the making dinner and all those kind of things. And he comes into the kitchen and he says, Mum, can I have a cookie? And she says, okay, you can have one before dinner. And she goes to the cookie jar and she gets the one cookie. There's one cookie left and she gets it out. And she's realized that she hasn't eaten since like 9:30 this morning. So she actually takes a bite of the cookie and then hands it to her son, right? Now, he takes one look at that cookie with a bite out of it. And what he does is he does this. That's my little giraffe having a tantrum. Right? So he takes one look at the cookie and he throws it on the floor and then he just like throws himself on the floor and he cries and he's getting upset. Now, we could look at that situation with that little one and go, oh my God, was that about the bite in the cookie? Or you could go, actually, I wonder what's happened throughout his day that has built a build-up of those feelings to make him out of balance. Now, that is a bit of a classic day for a 6-year-old. And for many kids, they feel powerless. They feel like they don't often have choice and autonomy. They're told what to do all the time. And that can bring a build-up of feelings inside them. And then when they come home to the place that's the safest, which is usually with their parent, you know, when there's something that is that tipping point, and it could be the cookie, or it could be that, you know, his sister had more ice cream than him, or it could be because you gave him the blue cup instead of the red cup, then all of a sudden those feelings can't be contained anymore and they come pouring out. Now, a really good thing for parents to understand is really up until about the age of 7 or 8, you know, this little child isn't doing this because they're bad or because they're naughty. It's because their nervous system, so their body, which has been holding on all day, can no longer hold on anymore. And their brain, particularly their prefrontal cortex, which is still growing and developing, that's the part of them that has rational thought and can, you know, use their words. It really isn't developed, you know, until about 7 or 8. And then again, it's not fully developed till about the age of 28, 29. So at that point, you know, that 6-year-old, its prefrontal cortex can't in that moment go, Mom, I'm so upset that you took a bite out of that cookie. That's just made my day so hard now because this happened and that happened and this happened and that happened. Children don't necessarily have the capabilities to do that. What they have is a body that's full of tension. They reach a stress level. And then when something tips them over the edge, all those feelings come out and the body tries to reset itself. And the way that it resets is through crying. It's through raging, and it can be through tantruming as well. It can also be through shaking and laughing. And so many parents will have experienced this. If their child has got upset, you know, and it might be about the cookie or it might be about the cup, that what happens is once that big storm has passed, you know, they've got really angry and upset and then they've moved into tears, you'll find that they're usually pretty calm and then they'll be like, what's for dinner? And it's like nothing's ever happened, right? They've moved on because the body has naturally then just reset itself and come back into balance. So what we look at is whenever we see a child misbehaving, you know, what I invite parents to do is go, look behind the behavior. A child doesn't hit another child or act out because they want to. They're often doing it because they can't help it. And so our job as a parent is to be curious to go, well, I wonder what's gone on to make that happen in that way. And so that's where connection is really important. That's where we might come in and just be curious to go, hey, I can see that you're feeling a little bit angry. Hey, what's going on? Now, they might not have the words to express what's going on at that point. And what they might need is they might need a little bit of playfulness or a bit of rough and tumble to see if that can build connection so they can get their feelings out. Or we might need to set a limit. You know, if a child's having a really hard time and they walk in and they start, you know, saying mean things to their brother or wanting to hit their brother or annoying them, that's where we could come over calmly as the adult and set a limit and says, you know, I'm not willing for you to hurt your brother, but I'm here because I can see you've got some feelings. And us setting that limit, you know, they might push up against that. And then all of a sudden, all these big feelings come out, which they've been carrying. all day around what's actually happened. Now, and I love to explain this to parents, you know, this is what a child does, but this is actually what we do as adults as well, right? And we expect children to have far more emotional intelligence than we even have, right? So think about it this way. If we look at that little boy's mum, right, and we look at her day, so what happened in her day? She woke up and realized, oh my gosh, we've got like 20 minutes to get to school. So straight away, she's full of stress, right? Straight away, she's like, oh my God, hurrying, hustle, trying to get everyone. Her day starts stressed. She gets the kids at school. She drives to work and someone cuts her off. And then she gets there and someone's taking her parking spot, more stress. She gets into the office and there's an email from her boss saying we need to have a talk. And that doesn't feel good because something's gone on there. So more stress goes on. And then, you know, a few other things happen throughout the day that feel stressful. And then she realizes, oh my God, I've got to get back and pick up my kids. And she races to school. She picks up her son, comes home. Then he has a big, beautiful meltdown because of the cookie. So she's got all these feelings going on. And, you know, and then she remembers, gosh, I need some milk. So she texts her husband and say, can you please pick up some milk on the way home? And he's like, yeah, no worries. I'll get the milk. And then he gets home and he walks in the door and she says, did you get the milk? And he goes, oh, sorry, I forgot. Right? Now, does the mum go, that's fine, darling. I've had a really hard day. That's really annoyed me, but that's okay. She doesn't. What she does is she's like, I asked you to get one thing, right? Usually we respond in a way that is all those built up feelings projected onto someone else. Now, we also do that towards our kids, right? And we do that to other adults in our life because we have a build-up of feelings and emotions that we're not processing. And yet, as adults, we expect our children to have more emotional awareness and be able to process their feelings and emotions in a way that we don't even as adults. Like, it's quite ridiculous when we begin to understand that our children are learning how to do this. And the way they learn to do this is by having it modeled to them.
Yeah, so I think it's very true what you just said with the mom as well, and the way we react with our partner, because I also see that. So I mean, the child can feel if their parents love each other or not. Yes. They really could feel that. And, you know, like when you always feel like grumpy, you're very angry with your partner and you say like not the good things about your partner, and one day Jachin do exactly the same thing and you wonder like, where did that behavior come from?
Yeah, totally. Children are always watching, you know, and I have a saying, they can't be what they can't see. So if we want our children to be empathetic humans, then they're going to watch us. Are we empathetic, or are we judgmental of other people? Do we meet our children with empathy and compassion when they're upset or when they're having a hard time? Or do we move into judgment? Or do we move into fixing? Like, what do we model for our children? And you know, when we're talking about emotional intelligence, what emotional intelligence for me is a human's ability to understand what they're feeling, process it in a healthy way, and then let it go. That's an emotional awareness for me. And that's what we want to teach our children what to do, by naming the feeling. So when your child is upset, you might be like, I can see that there's a part of you that's really angry, and anger is okay. Let's find a healthy way to move it. Let's go, you know, punch this pillow. Let's go, you know, yell outside somewhere safely. Like, let's find a way to do it. Or if they're sad, to say, I can see a part of you feels really sad. Would you like a cuddle? Like, just come here and cry, and we can hold them in our arms while they cry. And we don't need to fix it, and we don't need to stop it, because emotions, when there's room and it's safe enough to feel them, we can feel them and then let them go.
Yeah. And I think it's at first we have to train ourselves how to be empathy, and, you know, how to be emotionally expressed, and then we're able to do that. But as an adult, like, where should we start from there? It's not easy.
It's not. And that's a really important point. And I think this is a really good thing to remind any parent who might be listening to this thinking, oh my God, I'm getting it wrong. I really invite you to have compassion for yourself, because most of us did not grow up in an environment where emotional literacy, as in being able to express our feelings healthily, was modeled to us. So, you know, you don't have to look far. You can think back to your parents and go, well, what was modeled to me? So maybe you were just told you must be a good boy or a good girl and you were shut down. Or maybe you were smacked if you know, spoke up. Or maybe your parents just didn't know how to deal with you, so they were really permissive. And so there was, you know, nothing that you felt like they didn't care. So, what we have to remember as parents, of children, is that we have to be really kind and compassionate to ourselves, is that we weren't shown how to do this. So when we are wanting to meet our children with feelings and emotions in a whole other way, I explain it like we're learning a brand new language. So, you grew up in a house speaking fluent German, right? But parenting with awareness and compassion and consciousness is like speaking Italian. Now, if you didn't grow up in a family that speaks fluent Italian, it's going to be clunky and it's going to be hard to learn how to speak Italian. You have to practice it. You get it wrong. It's worth going and speaking to other parents who speak Italian. It's worth listening to things that are in Italian. Like, we have to immerse ourselves in it to realize that we can change it. So, one of the first parts is being kind to ourselves as adults, to go, hey, this was not shown to me. So this is why, no judgment of ourselves. We do what our society tells us to do or what we've been shown. But, I invite everybody to lean into the research, and there's some amazing books and information out there to lean into understanding that really what helps children and what helps humans thrive is deep emotional connection. And so, what we need to do as parents is we need to start doing that ourselves. So maybe that's talking to a friend, like, something we talk about is a listening partner, which is someone, when we're having a hard day at work or with our kids, it's someone that you can ring or leave a message with and say, God, I've had the most frustrating day and this is what's going on. And we speak it. And this other person on the end of the phone doesn't have to fix it and doesn't have to, give us a solution. They just have to say, gosh, that sounds hard. I hear you, right? And we learn what it feels like to be heard empathetically. And then we could do it for our friend. If they've had a hard day, they might be like, can you listen to me for 5 minutes? And you go, yeah, go for it. And they talk about what's hard and you say, God, I really hear you. That sounds hard. I hope you can find whatever you need to work your way through it. We begin to learn what it feels like to be empathetic, to listen with compassion and understanding. So when we have experiences of it as adults, then we're able then to often take that to our children as well. So it's a work in progress, right? And my first piece is always to parents is be kind and compassionate to yourself, because it's not something that most of us were modeled, and we have to practice and learn how to do it.
Yeah, I think it's very, very important that we have to do it like step by step. I think it would not easy at the beginning to really say it out, what you feel, because sometimes, for me, grow up in like a Asian background. So for me, I feel like parents don't want to express their emotion with your child because they're afraid that if that emotion is a little bit unpleasant, and then they will lose the authority with the child. Like say, no, you are my baby. You are not my parent. So I have to keep it for myself.
Yes. So I think it's really important to, and I understand that, because for a long time, parents have been told, I'm the boss and you do what I say and then you'll be a good human. And I think from that lens, that authoritarian lens is about, you must respect me. But here's the thing, we naturally respect humans when we feel seen by them, which means when we feel accepted of all our feelings and emotions, that's where the deep respect comes from. So often when children behave, they're behaving out of fear, not because of that deep connection and respect. And so, look, even in raising my own children, my highest priority was that my kids would come to me no matter what was going on, that I would be their safe place, right? That I wanted to make it safe enough for them that if they've done something wrong or if something bad has happened, that they can come to us and that we say, we're here and we're listening and we'll help you and we'll figure it out. Because I wanted them to have a safe place to land. So in doing that, that requires respect and connection, and it requires trust and safety. And that is about, not judging them and listening to their feelings. And it doesn't mean not having boundaries. We have boundaries and limits of what's okay and what's not okay, but it's not done through an authoritarian lens. It's not done through the, I've told you so, this is how it is. It's done through a mutual, this is where I feel the limit is. I want you to get your needs met, but this is where it's at. How can we find a way to work with this? Or sometimes it's just like, it's actually a no, sweetie. And you can have some big feelings about the no, but that is going to be a no. There's a different quality that we deliver it with. So I think it's really important to look at, particularly culturally, if we've been told, the child must respect you. And that means that, that you're doing a good job, that respect, and think about it as an adult, we deeply often respect people who we feel are in authenticity and who are who take the time to listen to us and connect to us on those levels. And that's often where a true deep respect comes from.
Yeah, I think it's very, very good point, and important that respect doesn't come with authority, because even though like some dad and even mom I call like tiger parent and they are very strong,
Yes,
but they thought that that their children respect them, but no, the children only afraid of them, and they do things because of what they don't want trouble after that.
That's
they
it.
know
And
trouble come.
That's it, because attachment again is the driving force. Do you approve of me? Like, am I enough? Like that's the fundamental core thing that we're all born with. And so if that's what I need to do to get your love and approval, because that's a fundamental piece of me, then that's what I'm going to do. Another really important thing to do as parents is we stuff up all the time. We get angry or we make mistakes. It's so important to repair with our kids, to say, I'm really sorry, I made a mistake. Because that is very powerful. One, it's honoring them as a human. Like, I am sorry I hurt you, or I am sorry I yelled at you. I am the adult, I will try and do better. And the second thing is it teaches our children about repairing. It models to them what is a really genuine repair. So we want our kids, if they mess up, to own it and to go and say to someone, I'm really sorry, like, how can I make this right? How are they going to learn to do that if we don't show them, if we don't model what it is to repair? Because I see it in many families when adults won't apologize or won't repair, and then they get angry at their child because their child's not remorseful or their child won't go and say sorry. I'm like, well, of course not, because you're not showing them how to do it, right? We need to, again, it comes back to, what do we model to them? Who do we want them to be in the world? And do we show them what that looks like?
Yeah, like modeling for me is the keywords for today. Like, you have to do what we want the child to become, basically.
That's it. It's so much part of it. We often sit in this, well, I'll just be like this and I want you to be like that. But kids are constantly watching, right? And so we have to really think about, do I live an authentic life? Do I take risks? Do I spend half my time on my phone and then I'm yelling at their kids to get off their phone? Like, what are we modeling to them? Do we model deep respect and compassion and empathy for other humans? Are we showing them what that looks like? Or do we model them judgment and competition? Like, it's really important that we start here. Parents will often bring come to me because they want support with their child. And it's always like, my child's not doing this, or it's not doing this. And I'm like, yes, we can talk about your child, but I'm like, but where are you? What's going on for you? What does this make you feel? Because a child is always responding to their environment. Always responding to their environment. So we have to start with the parents. What's going on for you? What do we need to look at in your story? How are you responding to your child? Like, that's where we have to work.
Yeah, definitely. I think that is a very good point. And for me, so it not sounds easy, but the good news is that we have experts who have been working with parents and children many, many years. So we don't have to go on the journey alone. Like, you have somebody like you, a school counselor, even teacher could also talk to you, or a coach or the therapist or anybody else who might help you. So you can reach out for them when you don't feel like, I don't know what to do.
Yeah, there's lots of resources out there. And, and I think it is, parenting is one of the hardest things we ever do. Like, it is the hardest job. Honestly, it is. And that's why I always say to parents, I know how hard it is being a parent. I've messed up so many times, right? I've also repaired a lot of times, but it's a work in progress, and we have to be kind and compassionate ourselves. We're all doing the best job we can, and we all need support. So lean into that where you can, because the better parent you can become, the more robust and amazing child you're gonna raise.
Well, yeah, I totally agree. But yeah, I'm just realized time really fly, and we kind of come to an end of like what you just shared. I wish I could talk to you for days because I can learn obviously a lot from you. So I think I just have two questions left. The first one, like, so now, okay, we understand how important of connections and understand like how important of modeling. So when we want to create like quality time with our chat and even our partner, what should we do?
So I think it's firstly, particularly with our kids, say, what do you want to do? So one of the things, we can talk about is having like connection time, which might be where you say to them, hey, I've got 20 minutes. I'm going to set a timer. What do you want to do? I'll do whatever you want to do. Now, if your child's like, I want to jump on the trampoline, go jump on the trampoline with them. Or they're like, I want to play a game on the computer with you, play a game on the computer, read a book, like do a dance, whatever it is, meet them where they're at. So we might feel like, okay, I'll spend time with you, but can you come to the shops with me? No, that's not connection time for a child, right? It's about doing what the child wants to do. So, you know, for children, and you can even still do that with teens, you know, you can go in and just go, what music are you listening to? And tell me about the band and where do they come from? Like meet them in their world. Like teens still need that as well. So the connection firstly comes from being with them authentically, not being there, but thinking I've got to send that email and what am I making for dinner? Like being present with them. And one of the reasons we say set a timer is so that you know what, I've only got to play this computer game for 20 minutes, right? Like, or I've only got to do it this amount of time. We can be present in that time. Whereas often if we're with our kids, we're looking at our phones, we're doing a whole lot of other things, we're actually not being present with them. So give yourself like, okay, for 20 minutes, I'm going to be really, really present and just delight in your child. So that's one way you can do it with your child. With your partner, you know, again, it can be like, well, what brings us both joy to connect? You know, what let's put our phones down. I mean, technology is a big thing. Let's go for a walk together. What can we do that is allowing us to actually just connect and listen to each other? And you know, I think too, because we often don't listen well, you know, if you're listening to this, you know, maybe you start with your partner, just start practicing it, modeling it. What is it to not offer the fix, to just listen and reflect back? That sounds tricky. And what do you think you're going to do? And just really start modeling that active listening so that then, you know, it becomes part of what you do in the family.
Yeah, so active listening also for me is another keyword I got from you is also like present. You have to be there with them. You cannot spend time and at the same time look at your phone and checking your email. No, it's not.
No. And like as humans, we're really good at multitasking, right? But children feel that. They feel when our energy is not there. And they deserve to have our presence. And it doesn't mean you have to spend 8 hours a day present with them, right? You're not meant to. But the time you are with them, if you can be present. Like, and again, when you're playing with them, just make it 15 minutes, but for 15 minutes, be present with them. It's amazing what can happen when we just offer that connection time to our children. It can change their behavior like that, right? It fills up their cup. They feel seen, they feel loved. You know, they're then often far more cooperative, you know, and then, you know, we just see behaviors make a massive difference by really just being present with them in those moments.
Yeah. I will keep it in mind for myself and for my other friends and parents out there. So is there any like last piece of advice you want to give to parents who really able to connect with their children on emotional level and learn about it?
I think, look, I'm a big fan of kind of doing our own work, which means we have to often look at the past to see why we behave the way we do now. And it can be painful to look at our past because we can often go, I didn't get my needs met, or my parents were really harsh with me. And we can have a lot of feelings there, but we need to make peace with our past and what happened so that we can change how we're doing it moving forward. Otherwise, we just keep repeating the cycles. So I really invite parents to look at their own story, to delve a bit into their own, you know, journey. What did they get? What did they not get? You know, what do they want? What's the kind of relationship they want to have with their child? You know, and then what do you need to do to keep fostering that? You know, it's on you. It's never up to the child to bring the connection. It's never up to the child to make us happy. You know, we are the adult here, and you know, we're the ones that need to do the work to change often what can happen moving forward.
Yeah, wow, it's what you just said for me is like beautifully like, and it's also very clear the steps what they should do. The only thing now, the only one requirement that you have to do it. You really have to go for what you know. It's not only in here, but it's also in the action. You have to really hands in.
Yeah, and that's why therapy is a great thing, like working with someone, because it's hard to often look at your own story, but when you have someone to talk to who can help you unpack it, it's really amazing. And I think everyone should do therapy because it makes us better humans, honestly. I think we all need it because we all have a story and we all have trauma and we all have places and things that happen to us, and if we don't learn how to process them in a healthy way, then it just builds up within us, and then we project it onto others, and then that doesn't make a good relationship. So we all need to do the work.
Yeah, thank you so much. And so what if our audience wants to reach out to you?
Yes.
Do you have any method or emails or website that you want to give?
Yes. So my website, which is www.laelstone, it's laelstone.com.au. So I have courses on there that people can do that are like short courses or longer courses about looking at their own parenting stuff, and then helping you know, some of the things we've talked about today, like all the tools to work with parents. I'm on social media on Instagram and Facebook and stuff with at Lael Stone. There's not many people called Lael, so I'm easy to find. I also have a podcast. So if people want more information, our podcast is called the Aware Parenting Podcast, and it's full of all this information we've talked about. I think we've got like 80 episodes on there, and it's all about, again, how we become a more conscious, connected parent. So it's full of so much information. So if you want a place to start, then the podcast is a great place to start, because it gives all our info of what we're talking about.
Yeah. So thank you so much for today. And I myself have learned a lot from you, and I believe that our audience also learned from you, from the parenting style. And I hope after today, they might have some idea to really like connect with their child and make their, you know, parenting journeys way more enjoyable. It's not only like, no, too much work, but it's more enjoyable on every single step they takes on.
Beautiful. Thank you for having me. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And I wish you a happy new year and all the best in 2022. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much.